Dylan walked into the analytics department, where he had just been hired, with an air of confidence. Chin up, back straight, and a smile of a winner. Naturally, he was self-confident. He was a young man, was single, handsome, confident, and ambitious. He caught the eye of his female colleagues and irritated the male ones. So upon joining the new team, he carefully observed each employee, finding out the most promising, intelligent, and, importantly, attractive one. That turned out to be Tessa, one of the firm's best analysts. She was not only highly skilled, but also strikingly beautiful, and, most importantly, unmarried. Tessa immediately noticed Dylan's interest in her, which she found flattering. Before he arrived, she hadn't given much thought to her personal life. She was entirely focused on her career, but now she saw his subtle advances as a sign. "I'm already 28, she thought. "It's time to start a family." Dylan understood that if he didn't act quickly, someone else might try to win Tessa over, and he couldn't allow that. So after 4 months he proposed to her, and she agreed. Tessa didn't have her own place. She had been saving for an apartment and renting a tiny studio downtown. Therefore, after the wedding, she moved in with Dylan. The first year of marriage was like a fairy tale. Tessa and Dylan were practically inseparable. It seemed that nothing could darken their family life. However, Dylan began to notice that Tessa's professional qualities surpassed his own, and he couldn't accept it. One day he said to her, "Tessa, maybe we should think about having a child. What kind of family is this without a child? A normal, happy couple should have a child." Dylan hoped that with the birth of children, Tessa would give up her job and not constantly remind him of his lack of professionalism. After thinking about it, Tessa agreed, and a few months later she happily told her husband that she was pregnant. Dylan breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, his wife would go on maternity leave, and he would remain the top candidate for promotion in the department. Tessa planned to work until the last moment, unable to imagine herself sitting at home with nothing to do. But fate had other plans. "Dylan, I feel chilled." Tessa woke him up one morning. "Did you catch a cold?" her husband asked, feeling her forehead. "I don't think you have a fever. Maybe you should stay home today." "No, don't be silly." Tessa waved him off. "I have to submit a report today. Just have some tea with honey and it'll pass." "Well, okay." Dylan shook his head. Tessa dressed warmer, as the chill didn't go away, and they went to the office. By midday her temperature had risen. "I must have caught a virus somewhere," she decided. "I'll go home and rest." A day later, mild discomfort turned into a severe viral infection. She got to the hospital, but it was too late. In the 10th week she lost the baby. After being discharged, Tessa was not herself. "It's my fault," she cried, burying her face in Dylan's chest. "I should have gone to the doctor right away." "It's okay," her husband tried to comfort her, though he too was shaken. "You'll recover, and we'll try again." Feeling supported, Tessa slowly pulled herself together and focused on her health. "Dylan, I want to buy a small cottage so we can spend more time outdoors. It'll be good for me and our future baby," she said one day, having already found a few nice houses. "I don't have any extra money right now," Dylan said, shrugging. "I've saved a little, even before the wedding, so it's not a problem. I just wanted to know if you're okay with it." Dylan was surprised, but didn't object. A few days later, Tessa became the owner of a cosy cottage and a small plot of land not far from the city, and a year after the first miscarriage, she felt the familiar wave of morning sickness. The test showed 2 lines. Overjoyed, she shared the wonderful news with her husband. "Great!" Dylan sighed in relief, already unsure how to get his wife out of the office. "That's it, no more office for you. You'll stay home. We can't risk you catching something again. I'll arrange for you to get a leave." Tessa wasn't thrilled with this decision, but after thinking about it, she agreed. And soon after that, Dylan changed entirely. No longer fearing competition and seeing his wife only as a homemaker, he quickly lost interest in her, and even became irritated at the sight of her. "If you're sitting at home, it doesn't mean you should look like a scruffy," he declared when he saw her in her housecoat. "And don't act like a martyr. Everyone gives birth and they're fine, but you're running around to doctors like an invalid. Don't you have anything better to do with your money? And besides, if you're staying home, then stay home. Don't go wandering around the city. God forbid something happens to the baby." Day after day, his criticisms and complaints made Tessa doubt herself and her ability to be a good mother, and this daily stress probably took their toll quickly. "Dylan?" Tessa woke him in the middle of the night. "Dylan, I'm in pain." She had woken up with a sharp pain in her lower abdomen and back. "What is it now?" her husband grumbled irritably, pulling the blanket over his head. But Tessa's moans forced him to get up. He threw off the blanket and saw a bloody stain on the bed. "Oh, it can't be!" he exclaimed, grabbing his phone and calling an ambulance. Tessa was rushed to the hospital, but the baby could not be saved. After Tessa returned home from the hospital, instead of surrounding her with care and attention, her husband became even more irritable and cruel. "It's all your fault. What kind of woman can't carry a child? If I had known you couldn't have children, I would never have married you." Each word stung Tessa like a furious bee. Exhausted, broken, and cornered by his attacks and accusations, she sank into depression. She spent entire days lying on the couch, staring at the wall. "Stop acting like an innocent victim," Dylan complained. "It's the first time I could believe that it was an accident. Now you won't convince me, and I'm tired of looking at your sour face. Looking at it, I'll get an ulcer soon. This nasty atmosphere at home is driving me crazy. You bought yourself a cottage, so go there. You needed fresh air, right?" This voice seemed to reach Tessa from far away, as if she were sealed off in her own world. The sounds were faint and the words blurred together. She watched his lips move, but everything he said felt distant and unreal. Life around her continued, but it felt disconnected, irrelevant. Her mind was trapped in a haze of numbness. The woman tried to grasp onto something, frustration, sadness, but all she felt was a hollow void. One phrase from her husband broke through the fog. "Cottage. I have my cottage," she thought, her mind sharpening. Tessa waited until morning and rose from the couch the moment she heard the front door close. Dylan went to work. She breathed a sigh of relief and started packing her belongings. An hour later, a taxi dropped her off at the summer house. The fog in her mind began to lift. To escape her sorrow, Tessa immersed herself in working on the garden. She started with simple tasks, turning the soil, pulling weeds, and clearing away debris. Then an idea sparked. She would plant flowers. First, she created a flower bed near the house, planting several varieties of roses. Behind the house, she planted a few bushes. In the centre of the plot, she planted peonies and hydrangeas, and along the fence, jasmine bushes. Amidst all these activities, she even began to forget about her husband, until he reminded her of his existence by showing up at the cottage. "I just wanted to see how you're doing here," he explained, walking around the plot and peeking into every corner. "As you can see, I'm alive," Tessa replied without looking at him. "And what is all this?" he said, pointing to the new flower beds. "Or is this all you're capable of now?" "Did you come here to prove your superiority or indifference?" Tessa asked calmly, not wanting to engage in an argument. It was too hard for her to regain her emotional balance. Dylan was taken aback. He had expected hysterics and arguments, not this calm detachment. "No, he stammered. "Well, if you're all right here, I'll be going then." As soon as the car disappeared, Tessa wearily sat down on a bench near the house. How had it come to this? She no longer felt anything for the man who was her husband. She tried to understand her feelings, but she didn't have the strength or the desire. Tessa stood up and returned to her gardening. "She's acting as if she doesn't care," Dylan complained to Freya, his colleague and new girlfriend. "She looked at me like I was nothing." "Dylan, you brought this on yourself," his mistress soothed him. Freya, experienced in such relationships, quickly calculated the benefits of being with him. She wasn't bothered by the fact that he was still married. The girl didn't seek serious relationships or marriage. For now, the role of a mistress suited her perfectly. Freya's main talent was being in the right place at the right time and drawing the right conclusions. Dylan, blinded by his own importance, didn't notice how skillfully she had charmed him. He sincerely believed that their relationship was based on mutual attraction, and her interest in his career was just a pleasant coincidence. "Don't rush with the divorce," she would tell him after another romantic dinner. "We're in no hurry." And Dylan would obediently nod, convinced that this was how modern relationships should work, without unnecessary commitments, but with maximum benefits for both parties. Meanwhile, with Tessa's departure, problems began to surface at the company. The analytics department started making mistakes in its forecasts. Dylan, who had taken on some of his wife's responsibilities, struggled to handle them, though this wasn't immediately noticed. Colleagues often complained to each other about him. "He just yells if something's wrong, but he can't actually help." Regular clients started grumbling, and one even called the firm's owner. "Albert Mitchell, it seems you're losing your touch," the client said. "We're used to working with Tessa. Her reports were always clear and accurate, but now—" The director, Albert Mitchell, frowned as he reviewed the latest documents. They were full of errors and inconsistencies. "Dylan, what's going on?" he asked Dylan one day. "We're losing clients. These reports are unacceptable." He paused, trying to find softer words. "A farce. Your data looks like student papers, not professional analytics." "Mr. Mitchell," Dylan tried to figure out how to deflect blame. "Our department is doing everything possible, but the workload is too great. We can't handle it." "Those are just excuses," the boss cut him off sharply. "We didn't have these problems before. Major clients are threatening to go to our competitors." "But, Mr. Mitchell, Tessa used to do a significant piece of the work," Dylan blurted out. Albert Mitchell pondered, saying, "Tessa. Right, she was our best analyst. Many clients specifically requested her to oversee their companies. Her reports were always flawless. Clients even joked that she might be clairvoyant." Problems with his wife, divorce and separation from his son had made Albert Mitchell callous and indifferent to others' lives. He began to see his staff as tools for achieving goals, not as people with their own feelings and struggles. What had happened to Tessa? He pondered. Wasn't she Dylan's wife? Or I'm mistaken. The man grimaced, trying to remember anything about his best employee. She kept the whole company afloat while I was dealing with my family issues, he thought. He remembered how she had once come to him, so enthusiastic with some proposal, but he had brushed her off. Albert tried to recall why Tessa had taken an unpaid leave, but realised he hadn't even bothered to ask. To him she had simply vanished from view as soon as she stopped being part of the office routine. And now this oversight was costing the company dearly. Albert had thought he'd caught a lucky break when he hired this ambitious Dylan. Energetic and confident, he seemed like a good, profitable find. He had even considered promoting Dylan, but now he was having doubts. Albert stood up and walked to the window. It was getting dark, and the lights of the evening city reflected in the glass. He suddenly realised that his own family had fallen apart precisely because he had stopped noticing people, even those closest to him. His wife had left. His son had stopped taking his calls, and instead of trying to bring them back, he buried himself in work, attempting to shield himself from the pain. But it didn't help. Tessa, he needed to find her, Find her and bring her back. Maybe it would even be a small step toward redeeming himself. Albert took out his phone and called the HR department. Tessa was distracted by the sound of an engine. Was it Dylan again? What did he want now? Her chest tightened. She didn't want to see her husband, hear him or talk to him. "Tessa, where are you? Where are you?" Tessa heard, surprised that the voice was not Dylan's. The woman stepped out from behind the house and saw a man peeking through the slightly open door. Albert turned around and smiled. "I barely found you," he said, looking at her, not even realizing he was staring. Tessa suddenly felt embarrassed. After all, she didn't look the same at the Datcher as she did at the office. She wore simple pants, a t-shirt, her hair tied back in a ponytail, and no makeup. "Why are you here?" she finally asked, regaining her composure. "Can we talk somewhere more comfortable?" Albert admired her, wondering how he hadn't noticed before that such a beautiful woman worked in his office. "Come in," Tessa sighed, inviting him inside. She was puzzled about what her boss could want from her. "Would you like some tea?" Albert nodded. The cottage was very cosy, so much so that he briefly wished he could stay there forever. Tessa brewed tea, brought out some jam a neighbour had given her, and pointed Albert to a chair. She sat down across from him, resting her cheek on her fist. "You can talk while it brews." "Tessa, I would like to ask you to return to the company. I'll be honest, we're drowning without you. I never thought I'd say this, but I didn't appreciate what I had." Tessa felt there was a more profound meaning hidden in his words. Albert continued. "Yes, it was all my fault. I stopped seeing people as people. To me, they were just cogs in a machine that worked smoothly. And I am incredibly ashamed to admit that I saw you as just another cog. And now that you're gone, the whole mechanism is falling apart. Tessa, please help us." She shook her head. "But why?" Albert exclaimed in surprise. "I'll raise your salary and agree to any conditions you set." "I can't," Tessa sighed, pouring him tea. She told him about her 2 failed pregnancies, about her husband who blamed her for it, about the depression she could only overcome by moving to her summer house. Albert felt as if he had been plunged into an icy lake. He realized how blind he had been to what was happening around him. They sat in silence for a few minutes, each lost in thought. Finally, Albert found a solution. "Tessa, what if you work from here?" he suggested. "You won't need to come to the office. You'll receive all your tasks via email and send your reports the same way. Please agree." Tessa pondered. Her money was running out, and she had no other income. "But I don't have a computer. I didn't even think about it when I left home." "Oh, that's the easiest problem to solve," Albert said, glad she wasn't refusing. "I'll bring you a powerful laptop, Tessa. You'll save us all." "Mr. Mitchell, could we keep it quiet that I'm working for you again?" Tessa asked. "I don't want Dylan to know." "That's the only condition?" he asked. "Yes," she confirmed. "Deal," the boss said. "When can you start?" "Even tomorrow," Tessa replied, grateful to have something to occupy her mind and keep dark thoughts at bay. "Your tea is delicious," Albert commented, finishing the fragrant drink. "Where do you buy it?" he asked. Tessa laughed. "I grow it on my plot. Leaves, herbs. I collect and dry them myself. If everything goes as planned, I'll even have lavender and rose petal tea." "I'd love to try that, if you'll share," the boss smiled. The next day, Albert brought her a laptop and a large bag, which made Tessa gasp when she looked inside. "Mr. Mitchell, why did you do this?" The bag contained fruits, expensive chocolate, seafood, meat, vegetables, coffee, and more. Tessa couldn't take it all in. I need my best employee to eat well, Albert declared, brooking no argument. Consider it a bribe. Pure corruption, Tessa smiled. The prosecutor's office might get interested in such a large bribe, but, well, I'm willing to take the risk if it happens regularly. If without joking, really, thank you, but you didn't have to. I did, Albert insisted. Chocolate is good for the brain, vegetables for the mood, and etc. Well, I'm off. If you need anything, call me any time. If I don't answer, just text. Left alone, Tessa caught herself smiling all the time. She hadn't expected their boss to be so funny and kind. Opening the laptop, she immersed herself in the familiar world of numbers and only surfaced when she realized it was already evening. She nodded, satisfied, stretched and closed the laptop. Welcome back, Tessa, she congratulated herself for the first time in a long time, without thinking about her tragedy or her husband. Albert often visited her at the dacha, ostensibly for work, but each time he brought something new to improve her living conditions. Are you planning to live here in the winter? He frowned one day after inspecting the house. I have no other choice, Tessa admitted, embarrassed. I'll buy a furnace. To heat the street? Albert asked, and to Tessa's surprise, he hired workers to insulate the walls and roof. This isn't charity, he joked in response to her surprise. I don't want to lose my best analyst to a common cold. He went further, organising the installation of an electric boiler and heaters. When the water pipes froze in the first cold snap, Albert brought a specialist to redo the system and insulate the pipes. Mr. Mitchell, I'll never be able to repay you, Tessa sighed. No, I'll never be able to repay you, he countered. With your contribution, business is booming. Old clients are happy, bringing in new major ones. Word of mouth works better than any advertising. The boss rubbed his hands contentedly. By the way, I'm creating a new analytical department. I need a manager. He looked at her questioningly. Me? Tessa was taken aback. But I... Don't rush to refuse, Albert said, placing his hands on hers. First, you're the most suitable candidate for the position. Second, the salary will be significantly higher. He named a figure, and Tessa was taken aback. With that salary, she could quickly save up for a down payment on an apartment. Does it sound great? The boss smiled, as if reading her thoughts. And I'll handle the situation with your husband. I don't want him to lose his job because of me, Tessa said, though angry with Dylan, she didn't want to harm him. Do I look like a monster? Albert made a mock-offended face. I'll handle it civilly. So think about it and of course agree. I need your answer by spring. Tessa promised to consider it. Winter had come and gone, and spring arrived surprisingly early, catching Tessa off guard as she rushed to prepare the soil for her flowers. Albert found her in the middle of this task during one of his visits to check on his best employee. Got an extra shovel? He asked, shrugging off his jacket and rolling up his sleeves. The sun blazed as if it were already summer. Tessa was always caught off guard by his constant eagerness to help, leaving her unsure of how to react. Seeing her hesitation, Albert took the initiative. He rummaged around the shed and found another shovel. All right, where do we start digging? He asked, his face lighting up with a wide smile. With the two of them working side by side, the task went much faster. I would never have imagined my boss digging in the dirt next to me, Tessa laughed, brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear. And I never thought it could be so enjoyable, Albert replied with a laugh. Over evening tea, he asked her again about her decision to become the head of the new department. She agreed. Next week we have a corporate event to celebrate the launch of the new division, and I want to introduce its leader, you. I've given you a heads up so you can prepare mentally. You women
need a nice outfit to feel more confident."
"Do you think it matters what others think of me, after my boss saw me in a filthy old jacket and rubber boots?" Tessa laughed, and Albert admired her once again. Every time he visited this little cottage, his soul felt at peace, and he forgot about being the owner of a large firm. Here he felt cosy, comfortable and calm. Each time he wanted to confess his feelings to Tessa, but he held back. Meanwhile, Dylan, on the other hand, didn't even think to inform his wife about the corporate event. Moreover, knowing about the new department, he expected a promotion. "Have you noticed that the boss isn't picking on me anymore?" he shared with his mistress as they headed to the event. "I suspect he wants to appoint me as the leader." The whole team gathered at the restaurant.
"You look great,"
Dylan greeted Freya enthusiastically at the entrance.
"And my wife is only good for tending to the garden and digging in the dirt. She's useless for anything else."
The employees eagerly awaited the start of the event. The head of the company took the stage, and without saying a word, his presence commanded attention, and everyone fell silent.
"Good evening," he began. "Tonight we gather to celebrate our success and expansion. As you all know, we have created a new analytics department. The only thing left is to appoint its leader. I have observed each of your works closely and made my decision. The head of the department will be—"
Albert paused and looked around the room.
He noticed Dylan straightening up and putting his arm around Freya. It was clear that their relationship was more than just professional.
"How could I not have guessed that that scoundrel was cheating on his wife?" Albert thought, feeling a pang, and continued.
"The head of the department will be someone you all know well. Tessa Evans."
Albert turned to the wings and extended his hand. Tessa stepped onto the stage, looking stunning. Dylan's jaw dropped like a big stone, and Freya immediately pulled her hand away from under his elbow and stepped back, her face contorted with disdain. "Loser!" she hissed through her teeth, moving away from the stunned Dylan. Tessa noticed this scene. She immediately understood that her husband had been cheating on her with this beauty, but she felt nothing but indifference and relief. Her thoughts were interrupted by the thunderous applause of her colleagues, who were happy to see her return. Tessa smiled, noticing their awkward glances. It seems that everyone knew about Dylan's infidelity. "Apparently, I've missed a lot, but don't worry, we'll make up for lost time. Right?" she addressed her colleagues. The very next day Dylan resigned, unable to bear the humiliation. Freya had left him even earlier. Albert finally gathered the courage to confess his feelings to Tessa. After her divorce from Dylan was finalised, they married in a small, intimate ceremony. A year later they welcomed a beautiful daughter into their lives. Tessa's cottage became their sanctuary, a place where time seemed to slow down, reminding them to cherish the moments that truly mattered.